wandering around in the sight and the sound. It's Rhyme and Reason 815.
Here's your rhyme and reason. Oh, yeah.
Hey there, Tony here. You ever wonder why God made everything the way he did? If you don't believe in God, you might as well tune this out and go on to something else that you're more interested in, because I'm going to be talking about it for just a little bit here. And, I'd like to have you around if you'd like to listen, because I'm going to be wandering around creation for just a bit, and you might find my words of adoration okay, but then again, as I said, you might think it's a little bit too syrupy, too sweet, too nice. I know nice isn't cool right now. You got to be dark and sinister to be cool. But anyway, like I said, wandering around. I'm doing that on purpose. Here's the Tony take. This is something I like to say is the Tony take. And I think it is, or should be clear, that none of us, still on earth anyway, can know exactly why God made the things the way he did. We can't really know exactly why. But I think the Bible clearly shows that his desire is to stay connected to us. I think it shows that over and over. Even as he, doesn't force the connection, he doesn't force us to stay connected to him if we don't want to. He's polite, you could put it that way. I remember a pastor's message several years ago when he illustrated how it seems to please God to do so much for us. And when you consider his ultimate sacrifice, giving his life, it's difficult to imagine that he'd do that for us humans who've betrayed him in every generation. It's hard to see that he would even want to do that. And I mean, that includes every single person. You and I need God's love. Everybody needs God's love, regardless of whether they admit it or not. And this generation might need it more than any other that's ever lived. But this world would have you wandering around in a daze and wandering around in a perpetual wilderness. Now, it sounds like I'm saying the same thing, but I'm actually using two wanderings as I'm talking about this. It's easier to see if you read what I've written about this, but as you listen to it, it sounds like I'm saying wandering and repeating myself. But people in the world would have you wondering, like, I wonder what's going on, in a daze, and they would also have you wandering around like, where am I, in a perpetual wilderness. So that's what I mean by all that. So the key is what I call a focus perspective. Marketers these days like to use the phrase eyes on the prize. And they, think that they come up with some modern mantra. But a guy named Paul wrote about that perspective a couple of thousand years ago. I put links in my article about this to Paul's writings, and you should go check that out. Now, I'm a poet. I'm a wordsmith, so I don't write the same way Paul did. I use words to point to God like he did, but a lot of times I make them rhyme, and I also put them to music. And speaking of that, I kind of worked on the question why, as I pondered and wondered, and just like anybody, why God makes the things the way he does. So here's something that I came up with on that note, okay? Why?
Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? Why is the sun gold? What does it all mean? Why is the air clear? Why is the ground brown? Why does the earth float and never fall down? 'Cause God made skies, he made them blue. He made the world for me and you, and all because it pleased him to. God loves us through and through. Why is a horse fast? Why is a snail slow? Why does it get cold when northern winds blow? Why is the sea green? Why is the sand white? Why is the day day? Why is the night night? 'Cause God made creatures big and small, and sand and seas, he made them all. And even if we trip and fall, God helps us to stand tall. God's love is always there. His love will never die. So you can trust in Him for all your questions why. 'Cause God made creatures big and small, and sand and seas, He made them all. And even if we trip and fall, God helps us to stand tall. And God made skies, He made them blue. He made the world for me and you. And all because it pleased Him to. God loves us through and through.
That is why
God loves us through and through.
And that is why
God loves us through and through.
That is why
Yep, and as the song said, God's love is always there. His love will never die, and so you can trust in Him for all your questions why. So we can see that He did wonderful things. He could make a horse fast, but a snail slow, and He made skies blue, and He made grass green, and He made the earth so it can float and hang from nothing. The Bible even says that He hung the earth, the world, from nothing. That's pretty cool. How could He do that? How could this world, how could this whole planet, it's not sitting on the back of a turtle, and there's another turtle under that turtle, et cetera, like Greek mythology. It's hanging in midair where there's no air, but it's hanging, it's just there. It dangles. There's no string holding it up. How do you do that? It's amazing. But, if you're not amazed by a creator God and you would rather not have one, you'd rather there not be one, you're free to do that. It's not a good choice because there could be eternal consequences. And when I say could be, it means there will be. But, your belief, if you're right, then I'm just one of those big fools who, didn't party on like I should have in this life, because that's all there is. But if I'm right, you partied on and missed out on the real party. That's going to be eternity in heaven with your Creator in paradise. But, it's up to you. It's still up to you. God says He sets before us life and death. Therefore, choose life. So you do get to choose. And I chose life. I chose the eternal perspective of being in paradise forever with my Creator. That's what I want. I hope if you're not there, I hope you get there before it's too late. And your last breath is the too late point. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rhyme and Reason, answering the question why. And as always, remember, life has rhyme and reason because God made you.
There's a rhyme and reason for your life. There's a rhyme and reason why you're here. Give your time and season to the one